Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Cecil Field, A Brief History. The United States was now in the middle of a world war, and Cecil Field, which was under construction as of June 1941, was now in full swing. By 1943, Cecil Field had become the principal war at sea and diving bombing training center. From 1943 on, Cecil Field was a pilot's last stop before being assigned to the Atlantic or Pacific Fleet during the war. During the Korean War, Cecil Field did its part of training pilots and personnel headed to the Korean War. In 1953, Cecil Field was designated a full naval air station, ushering the jet age and being designated a master jet base.
El movimiento revolucionario en cualquier rincón de la tierra.
In the 1960s, it was the RF-8 Crusaders with light photographic capabilities out of Cecil Field who, in coordination with U.S. Air Force U-2 and RF-101's aircraft, detected the presence of nuclear-armed missiles in Cuba, beginning the buildup to the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. Vietnam War.
I was 2 years old when my dad left for Vietnam, and he died within, or was shot down within 6 months.
My dad's name was Frederick Wright, Commander Frederick Wright. He was a pilot that flew out of Cecil Field, and he flew A-7 Corsairs. He was shot down in November of 1972.
is Pam Kane. My dad is Major Oscar Moderer, United States Air Force. He was shot down over the Khammon province in Laos on February 15th, 1966. So he was not stationed at Cecil Field. He was an Air Force career officer and pilot who was stationed up in the Washington, D.C. area at the time.
So our mission here is to recognize and honor all those that have served in our military, but have been either listed as POW, which is prisoner of war, or MIA, still missing in action. The official name is Cecil Commerce Center, that they call it, but it's the former Naval Air Station Cecil Field. It goes back 1941 to 1999. So I'm the executive director of the nonprofit Cecil Field POW MI Memorial. We are in the process of doing business as the National POW MIA Memorial. We founded this officially back in 2016, but we've been at it since early 2015. So that memorial out there is of 16 pilots. It was originally established back in the early 70s. Led by a lady of the name of Mary Hoff. Her husband, Lieutenant Commander Mike Hoff, was shot down over Laos in 1970, December that was, and there was no communication as far as his whereabouts. It was very little with the government and her, so what she did is she led the effort to establish and to recognize these men that were missing with this memorial out here.
Based on, she didn't realize where he was shot down, we weren't technically not supposed to be at the time. Right. Mm-hmm. And so she couldn't really get a lot of information. So at one point I had access to my dad's entire, or really her file, and just, she was very persistent in questioning our government and being very persistent in trying to get answers from our government. I just want information about the reports, his files, and I struggle to get answers from our government just about things that they already have and know. And she immediately was part of the cause and what became the National League of Families. And she read an article in the newspaper about a flag company, Annan and Company, that were making banners for UN member nations. So she contacted them. She felt that the cause needed a symbol.
My mother, as well as a lot of the wives, were very involved in bringing awareness to the men who were shot down and were prisoners of war or missing in action and wanting to get answers.
And as I mentioned to you earlier, John McCain is one who served on this base, and then due to the Forrestal fire, he went to another carrier when he was shot down and served as a POW, and when he came back, he was actually the CO of one of the squadrons here. So we believe he should be out here. Going through this process and realizing that there's not a national POW MIA memorial in this country for the 80,000+ that are missing is mind-blowing. So that is where the bigger vision came. Well, I look at it this way. The families back in the 70s started this. This is their project. I just know that when the base was decommissioned, that period up till 2015 when we started this, it was forgotten. It was left behind. Trees are overgrown, and I can tell you as a kid, we came on the base a lot, taking my dad. We had one vehicle, so I remember coming down the main drag as a kid, looking out the window and seeing what we call this starburst sculpture of the 4 aircraft. I remember seeing that. So years later, my wife and I bought a house not too far from here, and me and my kids were out riding bicycles, and I just remembered that time, looking for that sculpture. So, just was trying to figure out where it was. So we came out here, and sure enough, it's like, wow, I had no idea it's a memorial. Did not like the look of it, and then you dig into it and reach out to the city, trying to get somebody to come out and clean it up at least. what hit me was okay, walking that memorial and looking at these different names, it's like these are people and they never came home, a lot of them. And then I took it a step further and realized, wow, these families, they don't have closure. They don't know. I mean, what do they do? Can they move on? And so I realized my dad came home, so our life continued. But then these families were stuck with, what do we do? Some of them may have chosen to remarry and move on, or those that sat and wait, and those that wanted to do something, try to bring closure to their family.
I was 7 years old when my dad was shot down. I remember going to Cecil Field to watch him play softball games. And in fact, one of the games, I think he got his nose broken. So, they're rushing him off to the hospital, and, we're kids, we're trying to figure out what's going on and everything. So
I can recall him taking us out on the ball field. He taught us sports. I'm an avid sports fan, and I attribute that to him.
Did you see how that affected her? Him not being there, that big void at the end?
Well, yes. I mean, she had become the mom and the dad for 5 kids. So, but she really threw herself into this whole the cause. And I mean, our house was her office. So we had one room that had a big table. It was literally hundreds and hundreds of the bracelets, because she'd get them, and then we'd go to the Navy Exchange and sell them. And that's how we were raising money so they could fund trips to DC to try to get an accounting of all these prisoner of war and missing in action. So
because Dad was shot down in 1966, and because of what our country was going through during that time frame, it was such a time of isolation and fear and anguish and not knowing whether he was alive or dead. I didn't know any other families of those who had been shot down or were missing. Dad was not in a squadron that went to Vietnam as a squadron. He went as an individual, and everybody joined each other over there. So I did not even have a community of military children. My mother didn't have that.
When Daddy was shot down, I was 12 years old, and I have very, very vivid memories of still living at Cecil Field. When you lose someone that's a figurehead in your family, that's an important role model, it has an impact on your life for the rest of your life. For me, it was a little different because it's almost like there was no conclusion, there was no answer for many, many years. And then it was right at the end of the war, and he was declared killed in action in December, but there wasn't anything that backed that up. There wasn't, remains, there wasn't a body, there wasn't anything concrete. It was just the military says, this is what it is, and you're supposed to accept it. And as a young girl, I didn't accept that. I went for many, many years believing that there was a possibility that my father was still alive, which was very, very difficult.
luckily we had a lot of support. I mean, in the community in Orange Park where we grew up was, huge Navy. I mean, and the Vietnam War affected, every block. There was somebody that was shot down or somebody that was a prisoner of war or whatever. Senator McCain, John McCain, they lived in Orange Park.
Oh.
We hung out with them when we were, kids. Wow. It was just a tight community, and it's important because you get that support.
But he loved lemon meringue pie, and every year on his birthday after he was shot down, we always made lemon meringue pie and celebrated him with a little bit of pie.
The goal and intent is, when you come to the property, when it's all said and done, is it would create this curiosity, this solemn, humbling, I want to know what this is about. So when you first come into the property, you'll see this big steps that goes up into what we call, MIA hall, or the entry hall that you can walk in. So think of it as the Lincoln Memorial. When you walk up those long steps going up there, you have this curiosity, what's in there, what's behind those columns, and you see this big figure of Abe Lincoln. So that's what we're portraying in there, and there's a little sliver of light right in the right in the center of it, so it sparks that curiosity. But once you get in there, you can enter in through two ways. One way will go to what we call MIA Hall. The other is the museum side, the educational. So what's different about MIA Hall is, as you mentioned, the Vietnam Wall in D.C., this will also have the names of those that are missing, but it's a little bit different. One side is going to be a dark hall that you can walk through, just a big wall, but the idea is to have those that are missing, their names will be projected on the wall. So that symbolizes that they're missing. But you can, as they're projected, you can see the name, but you can't touch or feel. They're not home.
Okay.
So then on the flip side, the back side of it, we'll have this gallery of light that comes in, that shines on this wall. That is where the names, once they're identified, will be inscribed on the wall, meaning they're home and you can touch and feel.
The POW MIA Memorial is not just about the Vietnam War. It's from World War II on, all of the 85,000 plus individuals that have been unaccounted for, whether they've been missing in action, prisoners of war that have returned, or remains have been returned. It's trying to make sure that we acknowledge all of that. And consulting with the engineering firm Prosser that has just done amazing design work on it from a family member's perspective. They did an incredible job of capturing all of the elements of what it really means to be a national POW MIA memorial. They get the concept of the family, they get the concept of the different military branches, they get the concept of the military, the service person, and they just did an amazing job of capturing that entire emotion and feeling in the design. And they captured all elements of water, sea, and air. There's so much symbolism in the design of this that I think it's going to have something for everyone, including those who have no connection to the military at all, and especially our young people. I mean, we've already had schools that are coming to visit just in the chapel and to learn about what's going on here.
So, but this is for the families, and this is really, if you look at our nation's history, this is a memorial that is not here. It doesn't exist. This is really the last known memorial that we know of that really needs to take place, and it's long overdue.
He came over and talked, and I've been in Rotary 15 years or so, and he spoke, and it just touched our hearts. And Pat and I, and others in the club supported it, but we said, what can we do? And so Pat and I got involved with Mike. Something touches you, and you kind of just hold on to the skirt tail of the project and go off with it, and that's what happened in this project.
Well, at this point, my official role is that of an advisor, and I'm also the liaison for the National League of POW MIA Families. I sit on that organization's board of directors, and that's how I came to know everybody here at Cecil, and just really got wrapped up in the project.
So we kind of went the national route first. So we've got the support of the National League of PWMI Families. They've endorsed us. We've been a part of their annual meetings. So we've been focusing more nationally. We know the states there. They support us. There's a lot of veterans here, and we got a great government.
But it took us a year, and we worked out a lease with the city of Jacksonville for $1 a year for the 26.2 acres, including the chapel and the acreage behind the chapel.
I have seen the site plan, of course, for this project, for the memorial and the museum. I obviously have been a part of the chapel restoration. I was here for its dedication. I've seen it come from a very dilapidated place to the grandeur and the specialness that it deserves to have.
Yeah, the first phase is the remodel of the chapel, which we have just completed.
Right.
And refurbishing and remodeling that. And the second half of that first phase is the plaza to the right, immediately adjacent and to the north of the chapel. We're funding this part of it and have raised, I think it's close to $1.5 million of cash and in-kind services.
Oh, wow.
And we've raised a lot. When we get this one phase complete, then we can go to Northrop Grumman, we can go to, the big boys and say, here's what we've got, here's where we're going, here's our lease with the city, and we're looking at Rotary Club of North Jacksonville, which is the first club that got involved, but there are many clubs within our district that are part of this. Once we have the phase 1 completed, that's going to be the chapel and the 4 planes. And that's going to, now we've got something that people can come and look at and see and feel and touch.
I love the idea. I think it's wonderful, and it's a great group of people. And it's even more meaningful for us because this is where my dad was last stationed, you know, before he deployed and went to Vietnam. I think they're doing it right. I think it's going to be beautiful, and in the one place we really don't have, you know, Andersonville is a POW museum. We don't really have anything for the POW MIAs for both.
To me, it's not just a monument. It is going to be a museum. It's going to be a place of reflection. It's going to be a place where we can honor him. It's going to be a place where people can get to know not only Dad, but the other people who are missing, and POWs as well. Our stories can be told, and in many of the stories there's a common thread, but in every story it's different for each family.
You know, our country is one of the few countries that spends the kind of time and effort looking for remains that bring back.
Yes, we are.
I mean, that's always been a big thing with our military, is we don't leave anybody behind.
They were trailblazers. I mean, they were not going to sit back and
it
be
was all
quiet
grassroots kind of thing.
housewives. They fought. I mean, some of the letters my mother wrote our government, I'm like, but what it also makes you do is appreciate our country. Some other countries, she would have gone missing, we would have gone missing. I mean, and I'm not trying to make too light of it, but she was mad. I mean, I've got a telegram that she wrote Kissinger, Secretary of State, and she was like, you know, basically, I want answers.
But we got the call. I can remember I was sitting at my office at work, and out of the blue, I get a phone call from someone in the military asking me if I was who I was and telling me that that they had my father's remains. And you know, you think almost it's a joke. It's after all these many years. It's like, what are you talking about? But it wasn't. It was real, and they had his Geneva Convention card, they had his dog tags, and they had most of his remains. We have to demand the fullest possible accounting of our service members. We need to know that if you're going to ask young people to go off and defend this country, then they need to know that we're going to do everything that we can to bring them back for them, for their families, that they're not going to get left behind, that they're not just expendable.
They're looking for everybody from all conflicts, and they're finding them. They're finding them, you know, World War II, Korea, and that's huge. So I applaud it every time I see that they have found and they have identified someone, even if it's not my dad. There's always the hope.
MIA POW National Memorial, which will honor all our service members of all the branches from World War II to the present, is important. It's important for our republic. There are those that give the ultimate sacrifice. Not just them, but their families carry this forever. And so it's important that you understand how important it is to make something like this possible. In my hand here, I have the bracelets. I have the bracelets of Oscar Mauderer, who was shot down. We're still looking for him. He was not from Cecil Base. We also have here one of Captain Jose David Luna out of California, prisoner of war, shot down over Vietnam. He came back to his family. And we have here Mike Hoff and another pilot, Lieutenant Commander Mike Hoff, and we're still looking for his remains. He was shot over Laos. And so it's important that you know that we're still looking for them. It's important that this memorial makes it clear that we have not forgotten them. This is a great republic, but we cannot forget the sons and daughters that actually give the ultimate sacrifice. And this national memorial will do that and bring it to the attention that there there's thousands and thousands upon thousands who have not come home yet, and we need not to forget. Right here will be this memorial. And so, let's start the work. Let's get going. Let's get this done. For them, for their families, and for this wonderful republic we live in.
History is something you don't want to forget.
The vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored, we have loosed the faith.